Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to the Friday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and we're just a month away from spring. Yes, the vernal equinox starts on March 20th, and here we are at February 20th, 2015. When we're not on air, you can always check out our website at www.arh.noaa.gov or simply type in weather.gov and navigate to the destination of your choice. And as always, if you'd like to get your information via the weather phone line, you can call 1-800-472-0391, and our social media page is available on for the feeds for YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and that's all available off our main website. You can go there, click on the social media tab at the top of the web page. Now on to the important topics of the day. We have some advisories out for many locations across the area. These are all highlighted in yellow, but they're not all for the same. So we're going to work our way from west to east tonight. Starting over here across the eastern Norton Sound area, they're expecting some freezing rain along these areas all the way up towards Galena and down towards McGrath. So freezing rain, that's in effect for 9 p.m. tonight, and that's going to run through 6 p.m. Saturday, and more details on that in just a moment. And then across the northern Bering Strait area, including Gamble and Savunga, we have some blowing snow advisories now in effect, and that's going to continue through 6 p.m. on Saturday as well. This is for snow accumulations along the Norton Sound area here, and we're expecting snow between 3 to 5 inches, and blowing snow will reduce visibilities down to 1/2 mile or less at times. Now looking across the Alaska Range areas, we have wind advisories out from 9 p.m. tonight as a front moves up towards the southern areas of the state. These wind gusts will be gusting between 25 to 40 miles per hour with gusts up to 55 miles per hour, and this will also expire at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Now taking a look at the weather systems that are bringing our weather currently just to the south of the Aleutians, we have a low pressure system not affecting the Aleutians currently, but this is on an eastward track. So this is going to be one of the storms in the next few days to be keeping an eye on. Looking across the Bering, you can see with the darker cloud colors, this is a colder air mass that's entrenched across the central areas of the Aleutians, and slightly warmer air mass along the eastern areas. Taking a closer look back towards the mainland, we have a frontal plume that I'll put this in motion. You'll see this frontal plume will stretch towards the northern areas of the Gulf of Alaska with a circulation just around the Alaska Peninsula area. Northerly flow is just bringing some colder temperatures and some scattered showers behind this system. So let's put this into motion, and you can see how this has made progress through the day with the center of the circulation just somewhere south of the eastern Alaska Peninsula. Let's put this into motion one more time. The focus here is on the main storm system that's heading up and pushing this front into the northern parts of the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise, across the state, just some warm overrunning moisture making it to the northern areas of the state, with the southeast seeing a little bit of a break between weather systems, so they went clear to partly cloudy during parts of the afternoon. Here's the low pressure system at the surface that's connected with that upper level system. It's a 985 millibar low just centered here south of Sand Point. This low pressure system has got an occluded front, so colder temperatures along the backside of the system. This occlusion stretches all the way to the Gulf of Alaska, approaching the eastern areas of the Gulf. However, stayed out of the southeast during the afternoon hours. Across the interior areas of the state, colder temperatures, which is mainly light showery isolated conditions all the way up through the northern coast. We have a cold frontal boundary that's stalled mainly along the northwest coast, with a couple of showers firing off along the northwest. Across the central areas, the Bering rather quiet with just this colder air mass working its way into the Bering. So taking a look at tonight for the southeastern areas, do believe they're going to stay out of the rain and precipitation for the nighttime hours. However, they might see some fog develop after midnight, and then that will continue through the morning hours. Now, this low pressure system currently has brought 1.42 inches of precipitation already to Kodiak Island. So this front is a very moist air mass, and we're expecting heavier rainfall to occur along the eastern areas here of the Kenai tonight. Now, as this warm front pushes up ahead of this low pressure system, we already have temperatures around freezing across the southern areas and just below. So as this warm air mass overruns across the southern areas, there's going to be a chance to see some isolated precipitation across areas of south central like the Matanuska Valley and the Copper River Valley, but that'll be isolated in nature, and we're expecting this to change over to mainly rain conditions. So they'll start off as seeing some isolated areas to scattered areas of snow across south central, and then changing over to rain. And the same for the southwestern areas. As this warmer air mass, we'll see this cold air mass just to the north. So along the central and the western coastal areas is going to have the biggest problems with the freezing precipitation tonight. Across the Bering, mainly snow conditions on the backside of this low pressure system, with a chance of rain and snow as you head towards the Aleutians. Even possible chances in the central Aleutians. Cold air mass will bring possible accumulations there for Adak and Atka. Now, as we head into the Saturday time frame, expect this warm air mass and more waves in the upper level system to come through the south central and the southwestern areas, bringing rain. And we're expecting rainfall amounts from the northeastern Gulf Coast back to the eastern Kenai to see between 2 to 4 inches of precipitation. So these areas will be the hardest hit, and then across the southeast, some scattered chances of rain developing in the later part of the afternoon as weak waves move out ahead of the upper level system. Across the central areas, this freezing precip, the mix will be all across the central areas, with the freezing rain advisory staying out across the eastern Norton Sound locations, and then the windiest locations will be across the Alaska Range. Across the northeast coast, we'll still see some northeasterly flow along here with very gusty conditions along the Bering Strait. As this front moves ahead, it'll bring warmer conditions than what we've observed across the central interior areas. And then across the Bering, we'll mainly see snow conditions continue as this cold air mass wraps around the south side of the low pressure system. That'll be slowly weakening as it moves into the eastern areas of the Bering. Heading into your Sunday forecast, better conditions will prevail across the southern areas of the state, with some patchy fog and some light precipitation extending from the southeast all the way up through Yakutat, mainly some lingering showers through the Prince William Sound. Some scattered shower activity. The main focus will be for precipitation for snow along the northern and northwestern coast, as we have a stalled frontal boundary once that front pushes in across the entire state. And then another wave of colder air is going to come in across the cold front moving in on Sunday, which should make it through the Alaska Peninsula. So another cooling trend and a changeover of precipitation back to snow. Now, taking a look at your temperatures today, they were warmest here over at Homer. They hit a high of 49 at 4 p.m. today. And then all the coastal areas mainly were in the 40s for the southeast coast and on up towards Cordova and Valdez. Across the interior areas, warmer here today with temperatures in the mid to upper teens, and temperatures across the northern tier of the state. It's starting to warm up slowly with temperatures near Barrow actually -2 this afternoon, warmed up a little bit just after there. And then the Seward Peninsula was a big temperature range here from the teens to the lower 30s across the Norton Sound, and across the southwestern areas of the state in the upper 30s to mid 40s, and then cooler temperatures just out to the west in the lower to mid 30s across the Aleutians, which will kind of hang on through the evening hours. Lower 30s for the Aleutians and much of the Bering, with 40s across the Alaska Peninsula. We'll see temperatures generally in the lower 30s across The coastal areas in the mid-30s for the southeast for overnight temperatures. The coldest temperatures will be across the central interior and along the north and northwestern coast locations. Now, looking at your temperatures for tomorrow, we will see temperatures reaching up into the lower 40s all across the Gulf Coast. So warm all the way across towards Kodiak, southeast, maybe near 50 near Juneau. Across the central interior, rising up into the mid-30s to near 40, with the coolest temperatures along the northern coast and a quick temperature change back towards the Aleutians in the lower 30s and all across the Bering for their high temperatures tomorrow. Now looking at your flying conditions will be IFR conditions across much of the area due to this low pressure system moving into the Bering. So not very good flying conditions if you're looking to go out on Saturday. For the southeast, they'll have the fog conditions in the morning improving in the afternoon hours, and mainly MVFR conditions with the warm pressure, the surge of warm air aloft brings some precipitation to all of these areas, and the colder and lower clouds out towards the west. Looking at your passes in more depth now, you can see Anatuvik, they'll be IFR to MVFR during the afternoon hours. Adigan Pass should be at MVFR all day, and then IFR for both Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, and we'll see Rainy Pass IFR to MVFR tomorrow. IFR to MVFR for Windy Pass, and as well Isabel Pass. And the same for Mentasta, IFR to MVFR, and Tanita should be MVFR for much of the day. Portage will mainly be IFR and then improve possibly to MVFR in the afternoon. Chilkoot and White Pass, they'll be IFR to MVFR, possibly clearing out during the afternoon hours. Looking at your freezing levels, they're draped around the Aleutian chain all the way out towards the west and then kind of creep up across the southwestern areas near the Yukon Delta where they're going to have most issues, and then along the northern Gulf Coast at your morning somewhere around 7 a.m. these temperatures reflect, and then your 2,000-foot level is going to surge all the way through the central areas of the state with a quick climb to 4,000, and then at 6,000 to 8,000 across the Gulf of Alaska. So looking at your icing for tomorrow, mainly concerned across the Gulf Coast and the eastern Bering, with occasional severe conditions across the southwest and also across the Yukon Delta. I should have be aware that this system is going to be plunging across the state fairly quickly. And then looking at your upper level system, we have this other low pressure system that's just to the west along 150 knot jet with a very amplified pattern across the state with the center of the ridging in the Gulf of Alaska. At the surface, here's the low pressure system. The strongest flow is going to be ahead of the system across the southern areas of the state between 35 and 60 miles per hour at 9,000 feet with a change of direction. A southerly flow mainly just inland across the southeast with a high pressure system. Now, looking at your 3,000-foot level, we're not going to see too much change in the dynamics with a low pressure system, the strong winds again across the southwestern areas with the colder temperatures and higher speeds also on the back side of the system. Across the Gulf waters, expect 30 to 50 knots out of the south, and across the central interior areas, a bit lighter flow with the turn out of the east across the northwest coast. And then across the southeast, it's just a lighter flow aloft with the center of the ridge moving closer in these areas. In just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast and a summary of your weather through the weekend.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest this evening is Sean Williams. Sean's a very recent hire at our Anchorage office of the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB. Sean's a graduate of University of North Dakota, and after graduation worked there as a flight instructor. Sean has flown 121 ops in the CRJ and Beech 1900, came to Alaska in August of 2012, worked for the FAA as an ops inspector for a while until he was hired on with the NTSB in November 2014. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you.
Sean, you were telling me earlier that you've landed your perfect job. Throughout your aviation career, you were focused on safety and being able to make a contribution. Now you're here in Alaska doing exactly that.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Oh, it's great. Ever since I first started with aviation, it's always been safety driven, and to be able to move on and move up through the ranks and kind of do your time type of thing, it's great to finally be where I want to be and where I see myself finishing out my aviation career.
And I got to tell you, because your boss, Clint, and I are very good friends, and you got a great team.
Thank you.
Both here in Anchorage and with Bryce up in Fairbanks. You're in a great spot. What about specific training? Did you have to undergo any, or will you have to undergo any as a inspector?
Yeah, what we do is once we get hired on, you go down to the Ashburn Training Center out in Virginia for 2 weeks of it's intro into accident investigation down there. And then everything else is more on the job. You're out there with seasoned investigators and learning the ropes from them.
Okay. So I know that currently you're involved with the mid-air. I'm not going to ask you about that, but just
Yes,
to
sir.
point out that they didn't waste any time getting you started.
No, sir, this was actually my third launch.
Really?
Yes, I went down to Salt Lake and also down into Tucson for separate launches.
Oh, wow. You and I talked briefly about this, and I think we share a passion for finding a way to prevent future stall spin accidents.
Yes, sir.
Talk about that.
There seems to be, every year, you hear about all the stall spins, what the Alaska coined term, moose stalls or bear stalls. And when you start looking, there hasn't been any requirement to continue any stall training at all once you get your certificates. So I think that should continue. That needs to be out there to keep working towards that.
You know, I find that to be amazing, but it's not the first time I've heard it. I've had pilot friends of mine say, you know, I haven't done stalls since I got my certificate. And that may have been 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. And I agree with you, we have got to change that. Is that the responsibility of the, let's say in a BFR, is that the pilot's responsibility or the CFI's responsibility or both?
I think it's more of a shared. The CFI should kind of push the student a little bit, and if there's something that you're uncomfortable with, that's the time to work on it. You're already paying for the instructor to be there. Use them. Tap that resource. He's there.
Absolutely. Well, again, you're required to get a BFR, but what it consists of, there's a lot of leeway, but I agree with you. Instructors ought to really be pushing the stall recovery. How about spin training?
Spin training is another one. If you look at the regs, you don't actually have to do a spin until you go to get your CFI. You have to talk about them. You have to be able to explain them, but you don't actually have to do one. And to incorporate that into the training should be a priority in my book. And you can even take it one step further, and this gets into the whole political side of requiring maybe a spin endorsement before you go do a check ride, just from your instructor.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think it should be required, but there's nothing to say you can't, as a private pilot, find an instructor and find one who understands spins and who does spin training, not somebody who just flies around the flagpole. But say, hey, can we go up and you teach me how to enter and recover from a spin?
Absolutely.
One real last question. We got about a minute left. What one thing do you think we could do as an aviation community that might make it safer to fly in Alaska?
Just to understand that the training doesn't have to stop the day you get your certificate. It can continue. You should always be striving to get better at things. I believe that's a big thing that would help.
Training and proficiency.
Exactly.
Sean, thanks for being on the program
Thank
tonight.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. It's made possible by AKM, Alaska Public Media, but also the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. We're a member-supported organization. If you haven't renewed your membership for 2015, please do. If you're not a member, please go to our website, www.aasfonline.org. There's an application in there. It's $35 a year, and it helps us bring you programs like this and the safety seminars we have in the spring and the fall. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, fly safe.
All right, welcome back to the show, and now on to look at your ice edge. We do see some receding along the Cook Inlet area, and with those warmer conditions, expect some receding to continue. Also across the Bristol Bay areas, a little bit of open water here along the coast, so be aware that we're going to probably see this continuation of the ice edge continuing to diminish along the coastal areas of Bristol Bay. Now, taking a look at your marine forecast for the southeast for Saturday, we're going to primarily have southeasterly flow across the entire area, with the inner channel seeing seas between 3 to 5 feet, and the outer waters will be between 9 and 13 feet with gales along the areas as you head up towards Yakutat. Now, for your Sunday forecast, the conditions will improve slightly with small craft in the outer waters and mainly again out of the south and easterly direction, seas between 3 and 4 feet across the inner channels, and then between 9 and 14 feet across the outer waters. Looking at the northern Gulf and western Gulf locations for tomorrow, primarily an east to south flow across the area, stronger gusts across the Prince William Sound and near the Hitchinbrook entrance, and seas here will be 6 feet across the Prince William Sound and between 14 to 18 feet across the western Gulf, across the Cook Inlet down through Shelikof Strait, mainly a north to easterly flow here, gales across the Barren Islands with small crafts elsewhere. 10 to 11 foot seas across the southern Cook Inlet down towards the Shelikof Strait near 10 feet. Looking at your Sunday conditions, a little bit weaker winds on this day, so out of the east and south across the Prince William Sound and the Gulf locations, and then across the north across the northern inlet and southeast flow across the southern inlet and Shelikof Strait. Seas for the Prince William Sound will be down to 4 feet, and then the western areas of the Gulf will be between 10 and 12 feet. Across the Cook Inlet, 4 to 6 feet towards the Barren Islands and 3 feet for Shelikof Strait. Looking at your Alaska Peninsula area for tomorrow, we'll see gales across the Bristol Bay, and all the winds will be out of the south and easterly direction, small crafts elsewhere. And then seas will be 6 feet across the Bering side and 10 to 14 feet across the North Pacific. And then looking at your Sunday forecast, improving on the Bristol Bay and the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, 20 knots out of the south, with small crafts on the south side between 25 and 30 knots. Seas would be 3 to 4 feet on the Bering side and 10 feet across the North Pacific side. Now looking at the Aleutians, the Saturday forecast will be mainly small craft across the area out of the northwesterly direction, and then we'll see some gales across the central areas of the Aleutians with seas between 8 to 13 feet across the most of the areas, with the highest seas between 13 and 15 feet across the central Aleutians, otherwise between 8 to 13 feet across the Pacific side. Heading into your Sunday forecast, the winds become more westerly, and then we'll see seas a little bit lower between 7 and 12 feet across the entire area. Looking at your west coast conditions, a northerly flow becoming southerly across the central areas of the Bering, and then we'll see small crafts across most of the area, and then we'll see the ice edge still is intact across the northern areas of the Bering. We'll see seas up to 8 feet and 10 feet near the Pribilof, 6 feet across or south of Nunivak Island. Looking at your Sunday forecast, change of direction across the areas. The next low pressure system moves to the north, and we'll see a southeasterly flow across the western coastal areas towards the central areas. We'll see a westerly flow and small craft just north of the Pribilof Islands. Looking at the north and west coast, we'll see a northeasterly flow for your Saturday forecast, brisk wind across the northwestern areas. Your Sunday forecast for the northern areas will be a brisk wind, and then gales across the northwestern areas back towards the Kotzebue Sound, a little bit lighter winds here out of the southeasterly direction. Let's recap the forecast one more time. We have the freezing rain advisories across the eastern areas of the Norton Sound all the way back towards just near the Alaska Range areas where we do see the wind advisories, and these are out through 6 p.m. on Saturday. Wind advisory isn't out till 9 p.m. tonight when this front comes surging in across the southern areas. Isolated areas of freezing precip possible. First likely starting out as snow and then changing over to the rain during the late night hours. Very gusty winds expected with flying conditions being very difficult through the Bristol Bay area through the hours, through the daytime on Saturday. Gusty winds will continue all the way across the Alaska Range. Rain between 2 to 4 inches across the eastern Kenai and Prince William Sound areas, and then lighter precip across the central, staying all snow. Warm front will push further north, though, however, warming temperature slightly, mainly between 10 and 20 degrees as that warm front pushes through. Snowy conditions, blowing snow advisory out for the St. Lawrence Island and just off the coastal areas of the Norton Sound, reducing visibilities down to 1/2 mile through 6 p.m. as well. And we'll see snow across the entire Bering tomorrow as another cold wave comes surging towards the Alaska Peninsula. That will make it through the Alaska Peninsula on Sunday, bringing colder regime back into the Alaska Peninsula and possibly a changeover to rain for the Kodiak Island as we head through your Sunday. And then best chance to see rain across the southeast will be during the Saturday time frame as this frontal position starts weakening. And then across the interior area, still staying snow lighter, but with the heaviest along the northern and northwestern areas. Very strong gusty winds return across the northwest with another cold system coming in behind the low pressure system that'll be out in the eastern Bering. I hope you have a great night and a great weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.